And I put my leather wallet on the dash when the radio plays Crosby, Stills and Nash, and I'm laughing till I'm crying at a joke when I smell the scent of secondhand smoke. Well, I'm right back riding shotgun in a gold sedan. 1980 something, me and my old man. The crinkle of the cellophane, the crackle of tobacco flame, the stories that he told me as he held it in his hand.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today here in Stockholm and for all of our friends online as well. We're very excited to be here today to talk about Project Halo and to engage with you about some of the things that you might have been experiencing around the world as well. I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Isoa, who's joined us all the way from Fiji, from the University of the South Pacific. How many flights was it, Isoa, for you to get here?
Well, I left Friday night, arrived about Sunday evening. So it's been a while. Yeah.
So we're
recovering from my jet lag at the moment, but I'm okay today, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, Nam. We're very excited to be here, and the co-presentation that we're giving today is representative of this partnership project that we have in Fiji called Project Halo. Harnessing the power of nature-based solutions is our session here. I'd also like to acknowledge in the room we have Professor Will Glaymore, who's one of the also University of New South Wales leads, and we'll be hearing from some of our colleagues online as well. But Project Halo, why have we called it Project Halo? There's two reasons for that. This is about mangrove-based solutions for addressing climate change and security of water, food and energy resources in the Pacific. And mangroves are halophytes. They're salt-loving. So Project Halo speaks to that. And halos are also a green ring around the Earth. There's only a certain biome that they live in as well. So that's why we call this Project Halo. And we're very excited to share that with you today. I'd also like to acknowledge the lands on which we work at University of New South Wales, the Bedegal people of the Eora Nation in Sydney, New South Wales. And also as well, I've been hearing about the Sami people and the way they've been caring for the land and water here for generations. So I'd like to make that acknowledgement as well. The Project Halo is very much a collaborative project. We are 1.5 years into a 5-year project. It's a research-based project funded with generous support from Swire Shipping through a philanthropic corporate grant. We're very grateful for that, working in partnership with the University of South Pacific, University of New South Wales, the Government of Fiji, UNESCO, the Pacific community, as well as local NGOs and communities. And I'd like to make specific note of the Government of Fiji. We're very proud that the project has been endorsed by President Rambuka as a pilot project in the Pacific to scale this up to other parts of the Pacific and other mangrove suitable habitats around the world. So that's one thing we'd like to do at the end of the session today, is hear from those of you in the room and online about where some of these two methodologies we're going to speak about may be useful. I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Isoa, who's going to speak on behalf of the government of Fiji. They have the Asia Pacific Environment meeting at the moment, held in Nadi, Fiji, so they're not able to join us online. So,
Thank you very much, Dr. Andrew. Welcome, Bula Vinaka. That's a greeting in Fijian to you all present this morning. I'm actually honored to be part of this symposium and International Water Week, Water Day and Week. It's just important for us to be represented here in from the small island states. And one of my colleagues, former colleagues, presented something yesterday on indigenous people. So we're grateful, not just to be part of this bigger world initiative on looking at water resources in general. On behalf of the Fiji government, I'm standing here just to speak on their behalf as well, since we've been given the green light to speak on their behalf because the absence of the permanent secretary and his representative that were planning to come over, but due to work commitment, they can't make it. And also on behalf of the University of South Pacific, the Vice Chancellor and President of the University of South Pacific, I'd like to greet you all and say hello from Fiji to you all, and particularly you'll be listening to some of our postgrad students who will be introduced later. The importance of this work that we are doing is that mangrove restoration, as I can recall, since all my years in the environment field, started back in '93, and it's been a long journey in coming to some kind of a best way that we can actually restore mangroves in different places. There's piecemeal initiatives here and there, and Halophyte came in at the right place, right time, when we are just consolidating all the lessons that we've learned over the many years of this work, both from studies, research, academic, as well as technical work that has been conducted by various organizations, from local NGOs to regional organizations. Even the private corporate has been involved in that work as well. So mangrove, as you are well aware, is a very important coastal protection system that we've got, and more importantly, it is actually providing this opportunity for carbon credits if it moves to that direction. But at the moment, our focus is just mainly to conserve, protect, and restore mangroves that are present at the moment because of the competition between mangrove clearance for resort development or other development, and mangrove for protecting the communities, the livelihoods of the people, as well as the biological resources that depend on it. So with those words, I'd just like to thank you all again, and I think the Permanent Secretary will be so happy that we've been able to partake in this particular symposium, as well as promote Fiji in that respect, that we are actually heading towards something that would be a game changer in terms of mangrove protection and restoration in our small region in Oceania. So with those words, thank you again for you coming today, and we would be more than happy to talk to you during morning tea or any other time that you can see us free today and also tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isoa. And this is a slide that I'd like to share. This is the work of my colleague, Professor Glaymore here. But we can see where we are in the world today and the reason that we need to do things better. Here we are. This is the annual average of global temperature on the top. That's quite familiar to many people, from 1970 to 2018. And on the bottom is the biodiversity index. So green means more biodiversity, grey is less. So we can see while we're having a warming planet, we're having a decrease in biodiversity as well. And these two themes speak very much to why we're here at this World Water Week, and we've chosen to come all this way to share this work with interested people as well, to address these two challenges that are very much interlinked. Underpinning everything we need to do are two major pressures. We've got global warming and the increasing temperature that we see, and increasing in population as well. And one thing that I teach my students is that back in 1945, at the end of World War II, there was roughly 2.4 billion people on the planet. We're now over 8 billion. We've quadrupled our population in 80 years, and that's a huge amount of pressure that we place on natural resources. And we need to make sure that any solutions that we do to address climate change and also address the need for water, energy, food, and other things we need as a society are cognizant of that and working, and not competing carbon credits against food, for example, and other things like that. And this is why one thing that I also like to show, and I thank the Stockholm Resilience Centre for this figure, I use this one a lot, is the SDG wedding cake there. And the SDG wedding cake analogy speaks to needing a very solid environmental base or biosphere on the bottom, and you can see the 4 SDGs that are very much focused on the environment there at the base. Without them, without having a solid base, we can't then move up to the societal SDGs that we can see in the middle, and without achieving those, we can't have sustainability for the economic SDGs as well. And you can see going through the middle of those 3 rings there is collaboration, is SDG 17. So we're very much a collaborative approach, and we must work together to do this. And so Project Halo brings us in and building that solid environmental base to the problem of land degradation in Fiji. The Pacific is facing increased impacts of climate change, like many places in the world, but have contributed one of the least to it. So one of the reasons we're so proud to have the endorsement of the Fijian government is that the Oceania region is part of the High Ambition Coalition, and they set that up in, I think it was COP 22, I think it was. And we need to do more, and we need to do more, and we need to do it better. The Pacific is not on track to reach any of the SDGs by 2030, so we need to do things differently if we're going to be able to do that. And this is why, again, we're so grateful for the philanthropic support of Swire Shipping, because research and applying research to this problem allows us to change those trajectories and try and achieve sustainability quicker if we're going to meet the societal goals of 2030 and the carbon targets that we're aiming for 2050. They must work hand in hand, and they can't be something that we're doing separately or competing, addressing both carbon and societal needs as well. So there's two main methodologies in Project Halo, and they're what we're here to share with you today. We're going to keep coming back to these. The first one is tidal restoration, and that's built on 20 plus years of work by Professor Will Glaymore in the crowd there at the University of New South Wales, and he's restored thousands of hectares in Australia, and we're now transferring that methodology to Fiji. Fiji obviously is very different to Australia in many ways, but similar in others, with degraded lands along the coastal region, but different species of mangroves, different communities, different priorities, different connections to nature, and so we're making sure that we're doing that wholeheartedly as we go through. And the second one is mangrove integrated coastal infrastructure. The heavily urbanized coast that we have, we've got lots of engineering solutions to try and keep back the rising tides and the increased severity of storm surges. How do we integrate nature into these coastal infrastructure? How do we have mangroves that can grow and be part of the coastal protection system and not having more biodiversity deserts in these really heavily urbanized systems? So they're the two methodologies that we're going to share with you today. We're going to have the slides here. We're going to have 4 of our team speak to the work that they're doing. We have quite a big team now, which is really exciting, isn't it, Isawa?
Yep.
And we've got 4 of them speaking today, and the 4 that are speaking are the 4 PhD students that are based at the University of the South Pacific that are part of this research. And we also have wonderful PhD students in Australia as well. The 4 that are speaking today from Fiji, we're doing to amplify that Pacific voice that's needed here at World Water Week and globally as well, to have more of the research applied based on the ground with what we've needed there. Oh, sorry, I'm seeing something different on the screen. That's why I looked confused. So with these 2 methodologies, we're measuring the societal, environmental, and economic impacts. And the first one that we're going to speak to will be from Dr. Isawa, who's going to talk more about the work in Fiji and the work that he's been doing there. I'll just hand over the slide clicker for you.
All right, just to explain, Fiji has got 14 provinces. It's all shaded in this particular map that you can see behind me. The important thing is that you can see is the portion that are actually covered by mangrove at this time, right now as we speak. And unfortunately, in some of these areas, it's declining as well because of huge development that has been promoted by Fiji government. So it's important just to give to see just a bigger special information about Fiji and where the mangroves are. One of the things that I'd just like to share is that right now there's no, they're working towards a policy, and probably it's still in its final stages at the moment. And also clear guideline for mangrove planting. At the moment, people are just experimenting different type of techniques, which I will share a bit. And also, this is the reason why this Hellofight project is critical. To consolidate some of the work that has been done before and see how we can improve this type of mangrove restoration. One of the things that, as I've been mentioning, one of the threats that we've got in mangroves is coastal development. This is in terms of tourist development as well as just land reclamation for housing and other activities that government are planning to do. Mangroves actually, where the mangroves are in all of Fiji is owned by the state. So this is something that it's challenging in some ways, and also it's an opportunity if government is willing to work with us on this in this particular initiative. As in many countries, firewood harvesting is a big thing too, particularly for financial, commercial purposes, as well as just for livelihood. Pollution is another issue that has caused a lot of threats in the Pacific, in particular in Fiji. One of our dump that now it's closed now. The reason why they actually deforested some of the mangrove area near the dump is because it's been heavily polluted, and actually resulted to the EIA approving the reclamation of that particular mangrove patch. The other is watershed alteration, increased sedimentation, overfishing, sea level rise, now the common elements that actually is affecting not only mangroves but coastal system in general, coral reefs as well. Amazingly, there's increase in invasive species, not only just marine species but even terrestrial species like mongoose. They actually thrive in mangrove areas, and this is something that mongoose is the pest in Fiji. The other thing is that in some incidents they've also removed simply because community members did not like them, not because of it's just the odor, the smell of mangrove. Sometimes some of the people that are moved there are not accustomed to that. As you may realize, Fiji, these people moving from different islands to the mainland, and some of these people in the islands they are not used to mangrove environment. And it does cause a bit of problem to them when it's all over us, surrounding them. So, I mean, this is one of the villages that actually is mentioned that in one of the work that we've been doing as we're restoring mangroves after tropical cyclone Winston hit Fiji some years back, 2014. Just to give you some idea of the various mangrove drivers of mangrove loss in Fiji. I won't go through the data in detail, but just to give you an idea that one of the main factors that has been affecting mangrove, that is just in one hit it can destroy so many mangroves, is just this tropical cyclone. They say that it can stop, prevent some of the damages in the coastal environment. Correct, it has done that. But generally speaking, it is actually the lesser mangrove we have, the more vulnerable our coastal communities are and coastal systems are. And this is something that we are trying to, that's why government of Fiji is interested as well. This is the first, I would say, first shelter that most of the coastal communities in the islands, in the coastal areas, can survive from if we have an intact mangrove system in front of them. And this is just basically the various areas that were affected by tropical cyclone and the damages it caused. I mean, if you want, I can share the slide to give you some more, idea of the actual data in terms of how many mangrove hectares that were destroyed. And also, it actually came from a journal article that was done just 2021 by Cameron. So it actually provided a lot of this information. It was an in-depth study on the mangroves, particularly the damages that cyclone has caused in some of the mangroves. I worked in this area some years back. After just 2 weeks after the cyclone hit Fiji, tropical cyclone, the category 5, one of the worst tropical cyclone, or the worst tropical cyclone that ever hit Fiji, we went to some of our sites and it just cleared most of the areas. And this is what I'm showing. It's just like a bomb. It just exploded in the river banks as well as in the interior part of some of these places in Fiji. And it's actually taking a while for it to recover. And the other thing that I just like to add on to that is that there's some, as I mentioned earlier, there's initiatives that have been happening back in 1993. So even over the past 20 years, there's been piecemeal mangrove activities, initiatives. One of the things that recently, because of mangrove climate change, there's a heaps of interest now coming in the corporate world as well as in local communities to plant mangroves. And this is something that we see that it can be problematic in some areas because it may not provide what they intended to do in the first place because the amount of mortality rate that is happening in some of these mangrove initiatives, planting. And the other thing, the government itself is very much into promoting tree planting, and they've used mangrove as one of the best type of initiatives to actually fulfill this goal, planting 30 million trees in 15 years. And there's heaps of work still going. Some communities right now, as I speak, are doing it. And Fiji Environment Department, one of the requirements in terms of reclamation of mitigation measures in terms of environment impact assessment is that they have this ratio. You cut one, you plant 6. And we actually find this, I don't know where they get the 6 from, The whole idea of this initiative is to actually help government to see that may not be the best way in terms of mitigation measures of mangrove. These are some pictures of, this is actually one of the development in the northern part of the island of Fiji, the map. It's actually a new resort that has been just developed. Naui, it's from a small island. We went there to do EIA review with a team of other government people. And these are the type of planting that they're doing, which can be, I don't think it would last that long, but this is what we're talking about. They just go ahead and just plant inside the sandy part of the place. And just to add on, this is the work that some of my team are doing when we were trying to restore mangroves in one of the province in Fiji. So we actually did a nursery beside the mangrove system because there are more chances that it survive. But it's still not the best approach at the moment, but it's probably it got more survival rate than most of the other initiatives that we've done. And that's a group of people that we're working on, community people that help out in this initiative. And just to conclude, I've just got a few things lessons from in terms of guidelines best practice, which hope that we can add and actually improve on what has been presented so far from the current mangrove management plan guideline it was still in draft form. Has not been finalized, and that planting should be attempted in areas which actually naturally support mangroves. This is something that we are doing. Planting should not be undertaken in isolation, but only a full appreciation of the risk of planting potential planting site in terms of hazards and other type of dangers that mangrove seedlings can be destroyed by it. So this is something that we actually ensure that it's in a protected, sheltered area. The other thing is, and this Hellfight project will actually look into this as well. Planting areas which never had natural mangroves. This is a no-no, and I think most people that involved in mangrove planting, you shouldn't plant where there's no mangrove in the first place. Effective coastal protection from swell waves and wind require hundreds of meters of mangroves, and this is the reality. And I'm just saying, I was talking to my colleague, Professor Willia, that we talk about sea level rise, but no one is actually talking about the force of the wave, the momentum it comes and drives into land. Sea level rise is one thing, the other is a surge of waves that comes through. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. We were dealing with mangrove planting. And planting mangroves will not stabilize ongoing erosion. This is some of the, I think, some of the wrong ideas that have come aboard. But well-established mature mangrove stands may resist erosion. So some people plant that to stop coastal erosion, but it doesn't really, land-based erosion, but it doesn't really work in that way. There's other things that you can do to help it. And just the last few points here, that the importance of local communities engagement is critical. And you can hear from the students that be presenting, they'll actually dwell into this in a more deeper discussion. Mangrove planting with proper planning, again, what we are doing now is ensure that we do proper due diligence type of work before we go ahead in the restoration work for Hellfight. Planting mangrove without assured monitoring, and monitoring, as we hear in some of the panels and some of the discussion in workshops that we have here, is critical. Because until we have a proper monitoring protocol, everything will be just a failure. And mangrove should be planted in plantation style, which was done in most of this, in single rows and things like that. So it needs to be thought through again. And lastly, which this is where Hellfight project comes in, damaged mangroves will usually regenerate naturally over time if left undisturbed. And this is the natural process that we are actually, the natural phenomenon that we will be using in terms of mangrove, in terms of this Hellfight project. Planting is never as successful as natural regeneration. And that's something that I've witnessed in the project in New South Wales, in Australia, in Sydney, when we went there, that you can allow the natural system just to regenerate by itself if you provide the proper channels and hydrology to help it grow. So whenever possible, facilitate natural regeneration by assisted natural ANA, basically. That's the term that I would like to use in terms of the work that we're doing, that it needs to be assisted. You can't just expect to, so you need to create the environment in which, enabling environment which it can survive and thrive. That's all. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Isoa. Yes, please. Thank you very much. And it's been absolutely tremendous for all of the support that you and your colleagues have been giving to Project Halo, because there's such a wealth of knowledge there on what has worked and what hasn't worked. And I think one thing we're really happy to see as well is that role of community, and bringing the community into the restoration efforts and getting them on board is something that there's been so many success stories. And how can we bring Halo in with this new methodology from Australia to take the tidal restoration approach?
Absolutely,
And we plan on planting 0 mangroves in Fiji using the tidal restoration approach. The tidal restoration approach that's been implemented in Australia on degraded coastal lands restores that tidal ecosystem. Not many things like to grow in the wetting, drying cycle of the salty tide, but mangroves have evolved specifically to do that. And so when you get the conditions just right, as Will has been doing for decades in Australia, the mangroves come back. And Will was one of the developers of the tidal restoration methodology in Australia that's also now developed into a blue carbon credit market as well, a national blue carbon credit market by the Australian government. So that's one option with the tidal restoration work we're doing in Fiji. That proof of concept could be a blue carbon credit accredited program, should the Fijian government wish to do so. But it's not a case of the carbon credits wagging the dog, and there's many other benefits that's coming from this large-scale coastal restoration, and we're making sure that those are front and foremost, and carbon credits are one thing that may come out of this as well, with the benefits going back to the farmers and the landholders as well, that actually have the mangroves growing on their land. And the second one being the mangrove integrated coastal infrastructure. Mangroves on floating pontoons or on water on other structures are never going to have those same ecosystem service benefits as those on shore, but they'll be a much, much improved environment for animals and other things than just the hard grey infrastructure that we're seeing going in many places around the world. So measuring those societal, environmental and economic impacts, as we had in that wedding cake, is something that we're doing as part of Project Halo, and it's those benefits that we're really keen to see, and carbon credits, blue carbon credits or premium carbon credits may be something that comes out of that as well. So first we're going to hear a bit about the tidal restoration from 2 of our PhD students that we have waiting online in a moment. With the Project Halo approach, we want to make sure that we're cognizant and we're following the priorities of the Fijian government. As I said, the Pacific is a high ambition region, and we want to provide research to support those ambitions and do more and do better and lead the world in how we can develop these environmental and nature-based solutions. So making sure we're looking at the SDG progress, they come out very quickly. 2030 is not far away. What are we going to be measuring, and how are we going to be measuring it post-2030? We want to see how some of those findings could be used to be incorporated into that. The net zero targets of 2050, how these advances that we need to meet SDGs or whatever they may be post-2030, how are they also going to feed into what that net zero is, and we need to get there faster rather than slower as well, based on the emissions that we're seeing to date and the impacts that we're seeing around the world. And that these biodiversity and carbon goals, they also make sure that they must be working with the community, and there must be benefits for those people that are on the land, and not some. This is one thing we're also quite proud of, is that we're doing this on the main islands of Fiji, on Viti Levu and Vanua Levu. The sites we're still selecting, and we'll hear about them shortly, but we're not just planting a row of eucalypts in some faraway highland and saying we're doing carbon credits. We're actually restoring the land with the people on the ground, with partnership with USP, and using research, building on those traditional practices and that knowledge to put this tidal restoration methodology and integrating mangroves into infrastructure in Fiji. So we're really excited about the role of research has in this whole system moving forward, and the luxury to have 5 years to do this and to do this properly. So the tidal restoration approach that's been implemented in Australia, this is about restoring mangroves largely behind infrastructure. So it's not about going and doing things in front of seawalls and things like that. And in Australia, as well as in Fiji, there's lots of agricultural land on the coast, and much of it is sugarcane. That was drained. Seawalls were put up to keep the seawater out, and sugarcane is grown. A lot of that land that's closest to the coast is now becoming salinized because the infrastructure is degrading, and there's not enough profit in sugar to invest for the farmers to invest that infrastructure. And we're also having higher sea levels. We're having salinization from below of the groundwater, and we're having more overtopping with the increasing severity of storm surges as well. So Project Halo is using the methodology that's been working in Australia and applying it in the Fijian context, which is why we need to have the landholders on board, because it will be their land that partially will be restored into mangrove habitat doing that. And so here here in the large image, you can see there that you've got a floodgate, the land's been drained, the land behind is not very productive in many cases, and by restoring that tide to the ecosystem, we can bring back mangroves and have those nature-based solutions and benefits of the ecosystem there that are on the front of the farmer's land, protecting the farmland behind it as well. We can see there in the smaller images there, sometimes up the very top, when you remove the floodgate, it might be the case in the middle where the tide comes back naturally and all is well and good. Oh, thank you, Will. In the middle one there where you might remove the infrastructure and it comes back naturally, but more often so much has changed and the land might have sunk quite a bit. You've been farming sugarcane on the land for a long time and taking that off, the land's been getting compacted and you've been removing carbon from the land for a long time, that you may need to have some kind of infrastructure put in that helps that tide come back to that sweet spot where mangroves are going to grow as well. So that's something that we've been doing in Australia, Will's been doing in Australia, and that we're now looking at in Fiji, is there may be some need to adapt the infrastructure rather than remove it completely to safely allow the tide back to grow the mangroves where we want and make sure the farmers can still farm on their good land as well. Here's a couple of pictures here of some sites that we've done in Australia, and as I mentioned, Will's done thousands of hectares proving this methodology, largely with Avicennia mangroves in Australia. Rhizophora is one of the predominant species in Fiji, so that's we're looking at how to apply that lifestyle model that Will and our mangrove tidal restoration lead, Dr. Brad Henderson, have developed, and applying that into the Fiji context there. But you can see the before images on the top, and the ones below after is letting that tide back in and bringing back the tidal environment to restore mangroves or tidal marsh systems, depending on what it was naturally as well. And Will can speak to that in great detail if there's questions afterwards as well. But we're really excited to be able to do this in Fiji. We're now going to hear from two of our PhD students who are waiting online in Fiji. First, we have Jimmy, who's going to speak about his research, and then we'll go over to Salote as well. So, technician, if we could put Jimmy on screen, please.
Go and sit down. Go and sit down there.
Can you? Hi, Jimmy.
Yep. Hello. Thank you, Dancy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We're just going to get your slides up as well. How's the weather in Suva?
It's a bit rainy. Class. Yep. Can you go back to the first slide? Yes. Oh, no.
There we are. So that should be your first slide now. Do you see that okay?
Yes. Okay, so I'll start. Bula and good night from Fiji. So I'll share maybe 3 slides of my research topic. So as you can see on the screen. So the topic is understanding mangrove forest composition, attributes and its associated ecosystem services to help inform restoration, conservation and management of existing forest. So these are the few gaps, maybe just 3 of them that would like to address. The first one is I think that there is lack of study linking the attributes of mangroves to the ecosystem services or functions that they provide in Fiji. So that's one gap that we'd like to address in the study. And the second one is I think there is no study that had really pointed out the impact of floodgates have on the farmland and the need to restore. So that's the second one. And the third one is I think also there is a lack of baseline indicators, especially on site for pre and post restoration initiative in Fiji. So those are basically the 3 gaps that we'd like to look on in the study. Next slide, please.
Next slide.
Move to the next slide, please.
Next slide.
Go by. Oh, yeah. So these are the 3 key objectives. So the first one is to determine the forest composition and the attributes with the ecosystem services they provide in different mangrove landscapes in Fiji. So basically here, we'd like to measure the attributes. What are the attributes that provides this. Just for example, maybe we measure the roots, type of roots that can do wave attenuation or other functions for the stem or the branch that they do. They can sequestrate carbon. So that is linking the whatever the ecosystem services to the traits or the functional traits that they have, uh, and what they look like in Fiji. So maybe we'll do it in the deltas, and then what it looks like in the island. So that's basically the first objective. So basically, what they look like, what is the mangrove look like, attributes look like in Fiji. The second objective is to analyze the difference in land elevation between the natural mangrove site and the degradation abandoned farmland. So there are farmlands in Fiji that they have the levees have been down, and there is a change in elevation. So you can see mangrove is growing at higher, and the farmland is at that level. So we just want to find out why and how, and so that is looking at how this land have been impacted. So what they look like, because those areas, the sugarcane areas of, at the first place, they are mangroves reclaimed for sugarcane. So that is the second objective. And the objective is to identify and assess key baseline indicators essential for monitoring the success of tidal restoration in coastal wetland ecosystem. So before we restore, we have to have measure a few indicators. There are indicators that we put in place, like the nutrient, salinity, the DO. So there are a list of indicators that we have that we will measure before and then maybe after restoration. But then we'd like to put a framework that, say for Fiji, if we want to start restoration, these are the indicators that might be helpful to consider while you're doing the restoration. So these three objectives like a story of what they look like in natural environment, and then we go to the abandoned and degraded farmland, and how do they been impacted. So that's the second one, and the third point is how we can restore it. So this degraded, we cannot be used now. So how can we restore it? And that is where the Halo, I think, project comes in. Move to the last slide, please. Yeah, so implication of the project or the study. So to link the attributes of the mangroves and the associated ecosystem services that they support in mangrove landscape in Fiji. So sometimes we talk about, oh, these are the benefits of mangrove. These are the benefits, but we don't actually think which attributes of mangrove really link with that ecosystem. So that is basically the implication of that. Secondly, in terms of the floodgates and the levees, we determine the impact that floodgates have on the farmland and the need to restore. So how it's been working and when they don't work, and what the impact they have on the farmland. And the farmlands are degraded, then maybe there is a need to restore. Also, with that study on the elevation, it can tell us where mangroves could establish if they restored. So on those sites that we want to do. And the last one is at least establish a baseline indicator framework for mangroves restoration initiatives in Fiji. Thank you so much.
Come on. Round of applause for Jimmy. Thank you very much, Jimmy. And I should have pointed out that our 4 PhD students that we have joining us from Fiji today, they started their PhDs in February, so they're at the start of their journey as part of this 5-year project. So it's really exciting, Jimmy, to see what you have lined up in front of you and to capture that story of the degraded farmlands and monitoring that and measuring that as we go through to a restored tidal ecosystem. So we're really looking forward to doing that as well. And one thing as well that Project Halo allows all of the PhD students, both in Australia and in Fiji, is a Kochutel PhD program. As I mentioned, collaboration is at the heart of this initiative as well. And so Jimmy is applying to do a Kochutel PhD or joint PhD, which means he will get a PhD from USP and the University of New South Wales, and similar for our Australians. So very much about sharing knowledge and doing things together. So we're really excited, Jimmy, to follow that story. And thank you very much for sharing that. And I'd now like to hand over to another one of our Fijian PhD students, Salote, who will be joining us online. And she's working on the work I mentioned of Dr. Brad Henderson, who's developed this life cycle model in Australia and applying that to the Fiji context. Salote, I think the technician is just going to bring you up.
Bulvanaka, can you hear me, Associate Professor Dempsey?
Yes, Salate Bulla, we can hear you and we can see you. We're just going to bring. Oh, I can see you. We're going to bring you up on the big screen in a moment.
Thank you so much.
Can we do the slides as well, please? Okay. Thank you, Salate. Over to you, and I'll control the slides from here.
Bulvanak, everyone, from Stockholm. My topic will be on enhancing mangrove restoration success through a life cycle approach to physical stresses. Physical stresses, meaning at each life cycle that I'll be adopting from the conceptual framework that was done by Dr. Henderson and Will Glamore in 2024. I'll be adopting that same framework and adapting it in the Fijian context. So for two species, which is Rhizophora stylosa and Bruguera gymnorrhiza. So at each life cycle, each life stages, what are some of the parameters that affects establishment, development, maturity, to its reproduction until it matures? It takes about 15 to 20 years for a mangrove to mature. When I say mature, it is to reproduce, reproduce for, and with this conceptual framework that I'm given the privilege to be supervised by the expertise, which is Dr. Henderson and Professor Glamore. So given that opportunity and being led and by their leadership, this will be a success. Next uh, slide, please. Yes, so my research objectives is to develop a life cycle model that explains environmental factors influencing both growth and survivorship. That was from the life cycle approach that I had showed in my first slide. And objective two is enhancing the life cycle model through laboratory and field studies to quantify mangrove environmental thresholds. So here I'll be conducting two experimental setups, which is mainly focusing on inundation and desiccation. So these two experimental setups will be carried out at Marine School of Marine at the University of the South Pacific, where I'm registered in. And from the findings here, I will then conduct objective three, which is to apply this life cycle model to assess past restoration outcomes and identify future restoration opportunities. And I will be applying this life cycle model in Fiji, and then I will also conduct it in Australia while doing my completing my Coratel program that I will be registered in UNSW. So these three main objectives, even though it's only three objectives, but focusing on two separate species really expands the whole scope. Why two species? Why these two species? Rhizophora stylosa and Bulgaria gymnorrhiza. Rhizophora stylosa is present in approximately 28 countries across the globe, and Bulgaria gymnorrhiza is present in 46 different countries across the globe. So when this study becomes a success, what I have done to Henderson and William Gilmore's work on conceptualizing framework for species, it can be adopted in this a broader scope that has these two species present. Next slide, please. Implications of project. So in this project, I aim to significantly advance the field mangrove restoration by addressing key physical stresses that hinder the successful rates and mortality rates of restoration projects, especially in Fiji. With enhancing and understanding physical stresses, we can be able to monitor the success rates at each stages, and it's really, really critical because it takes about 15 to 20 years for one mangrove plant, to reach its maturity. So it's really important that each life stages is carefully studied, and the gaps that I'll be filling in, which is the inundation and desiccation, is done proper, so we can develop a more robust life cycle approach and a successful pilot implementation by testing and refining the life cycle approach. And in this research, will demonstrate its effectiveness by providing a model for future restoration efforts, not only in Fiji. As Fiji is its pilot country, it can be adopted across the Pacific region and eventually the globe that has these two species present, Rhizophora stellata and Bruguera gymnorrhiza. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Lotte. And is it true in that is it true in that photo that while you're working there, up to your armpits in water, Brad's just relaxing in the boat? Is that correct?
I am a servant of his leadership, so
Just joking, Brad. No, thank you very much, Lotte. It's
thank
fantastic
you,
to hear your
sir.
work, and I'd also like to thank you for you've already got 300 propagules planted with support of your local church group, ready for some of the tank experiments, which is fantastic at USP,
Yes,
and the support
560 propagules.
and the support that you've also been giving us to move through some of the meetings and approvals that we've needed. So thank you very much for your talk and for all of the work you've done so far. We look forward to following your journey as well. Thank you very much. And then the other methodology that we have as part of Project Halo is the MICI, or the Mangrove Integrated Coastal Infrastructure. And this is something that we've been working on through the Global Water Institute. Was the original connection there. We had a letter of agreement with UNESCO back in 2018 to start doing some work on floating mangrove pontoons, which we've now expanded to this concept of mangrove integrated coastal infrastructure. So one of the challenges that we face is how do we make sure that mangroves want to grow on something they don't grow on naturally, and how do we replicate that tidal inundation, and how much of it do they actually need? Using some of that life cycle analysis and understanding for different species, how can we make sure mangroves want to grow on the infrastructure, and not only grow but thrive, not just survive as well? So that's something that we've been doing here, and you can see some of the conceptual diagrams. As a mangrove grows, it obviously is going to have more weight and more biomass. We have a concept here of a 1-year-old mangrove and a 3-year-old mangrove on the left there. So as these pontoons get heavier and grow, how do we make sure that they're going to be able to withstand, sea conditions, wind conditions, and things like that? So there's a lot of engineering behind this, and shortly I'm going to hand over to Muzamil, who's a mechanical engineer and the PhD at USP, who's been working on this with us. And this work is being led under the Halo team by Dr. Dana Tothova, who is leading this and has developed some of these initial concepts there. And so here we can see a generic port in a Pacific context there. We can see that there's some damage that's occurred. A lot of infrastructure globally is needing more investment and more money put in. So how can we bring in nature to this? How can we have the benefits of a nature-based solution and ecosystem services as part of our hard grey infrastructure going forward? And there's a paper that's under review at the moment, and when it comes out, we'll be sharing it on our Project Halo website and linked in our other channels there, looking at different ways to bring mangroves into the coastal infrastructure. There's different families there, there's separate floating pontoons, there's systems that need to have an active energy approach to perhaps bring back some of that tidal flooding and drying, and there's some systems that rely on it naturally as well. So as part of Project Halo, we are tasked with developing these and implementing them in Fiji, and we're at the very early stages, 1.5 years into the 5 years, but showing some promising results as well from our flume tanks. And at the University of New South Wales, we have some really large flume tanks and 3D wave basins as well to develop and test these things in. So there's the engineering side, and then there's the biological needs of the plant that we need to test side by side, and something that we're doing there. And this is another artist's impression of what we want to get to. How do we have the public space? How do we improve things? It doesn't have to be a solution just for Fiji, but Fiji is the pilot place for this. But globally, how can we bring mangroves back into the coastal environment? How can we bring them into public space and give connectivity from people from this very hard, straight, grey line that often exists between the land and the sea? How can we soften that and bring mangroves back in where they wouldn't otherwise be due to wave energy? And as Dr. Isoa mentioned, if there's mudflats, you don't want to plant them there, and mudflats are their own special ecosystem, so we shouldn't be doing it in many cases as well. So here, how will we bring mangroves back in? And here we require some kind of engineering solution. So this mangrove integrated coastal infrastructure is something that we're working on with USP and UNESCO as well. UNESCO's been there since the start. We've been doing some initial lab experiments and field experiments that we can see there. We can see there just looking at how does having a changing biomass on a pontoon affect the stability of a pontoon. These are very important questions if we're going to be implementing this in the real world. And here we can see we have Dana there in the yellow gumboots who's leading this work with Sarah and Julia, two of the PhDs of Project Halo, planting mangrove propagules in a floating wetland system in Manly Creek near the Water Research Laboratory there. So we've got sedge grasses around the outside, the mangroves are in the middle there. That was just put in about 6 or 7 weeks ago now, I believe, and so far the mangroves are doing well, but we need to now monitor them and see how well they're going to grow and how do we make sure that they're getting everything they need in this environment that they may not be used to as well. I'm now very happy to hand over to Muzamil, who's a PhD student who's working on this. He's based at the University of the South Pacific. Just bring up your first slide here, Muzamil, and we'll get the technician to bring you up.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you. We're just waiting for your slides to come up. I'll let you know when we're ready.
Okay.
Yes, we can see you and we can see your first slide. Over to you, Muzamil.
Hello everybody. Hello to everyone in the room. So I'm working on the third goal of Project Hello, which is enhancing coastal resilience through innovative floating mangrove pontoon systems. So the first question is why floating mangroves? To answer this question, we have 4 points here. The first one is this would be beneficial for regions where traditional restoration is impossible, such as regions which are not inundated periodically but are waterlogged full time due to sea level rise. And then the second one is it's a nature-based solution for coastal protection, where traditional structures such as seawalls disrupt natural processes, causing erosion at the base and sediment starvation elsewhere, blocking sediment from inland sources, altering longshore currents, and destroying the natural habitat that supports coastal ecosystems. Thirdly, it's an innovative solution to coastal inundation. And lastly, it's going to improve ecosystem services, such as shown in the accompanying image. So we can see that floating mangroves will improve coastal protection. It will contribute towards climate regulation, carbon sequestration, reduce waves hitting the shoreline. It's eco-friendly. Also has aesthetic views and um, eco-friendly tourism. It will provide habitat for fish and other sea animals, and also improve water quality. Next slide, please. So I'll be working on the 3 main objectives. So the first objective is to conduct a feasibility study for the implementation of mangrove integrated coastal infrastructure, or as we call it, MICI, around Fiji. So the first step is to the methodology. The first step is to identify a preliminary desktop feasibility study of 50 candidate locations around Fiji, and then we're gonna evaluate how MICI can enhance coastal ecosystem services such as habitat provision, erosion control, and water quality improvement. The second objective is to design and deploy MICI at Walu Bay in Fiji and monitor its performance. And how we're gonna achieve that is we're gonna do a design of a preliminary pontoon through CAD and engineering calculations. And then we're gonna look into the material selection of things. Here we'll be looking at the environmental sustainability of the material, the durability, the buoyancy, and it needs to be cost effective as well and locally sourced. And thirdly, we're gonna fabricate and deploy, and then we're gonna be monitoring its growth on the MICI. And thirdly, the third objective is to test the MICI model in a wave flume at different scenarios at the UNSW, as mentioned by Dr. Denzi. So we're gonna do a scale model, a 1:20 scale model for lab testing, and then we're gonna test at different plant depths, planting media, mangrove plants at different growth stages, such that the weight of the mangrove plant alters. And then we're gonna do some wave response test, mooring tension test, the stability test, and still water test as well. And finally, next slide, please. the implications for this one, the impact. So at the end of this project, we plan to implement 3 by 90 meter long floating mangroves at locations around Fiji, identified through the feasibility study as in objective 1. And then this explores a novel concept that will lay the foundation for future studies in the area of Mickey and generate essential data on the ecological conditions required to support healthy mangrove growth and Mickey. And successful implementation could offer an alternative mitigation strategy against coastal inundation, particularly in areas where traditional restoration is difficult or impossible. And it will contribute to the achievement of multiple SDGs, such as SDG 13, which is climate change, SDG 14, life below water, and SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Musabildo. It's going to be really exciting when we walk on those pontoons in Fiji in 3 to 4 years' time and do that. We're really excited to have you come to the University of New South Wales and use the flume tank there, and working with Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Antoine and Dana as well, Dr. Tothova. Just wait for the slides to come back up. Thank you very much. And so the site selection now, so now we've talked about the two methodologies. There's the tidal restoration methodology and there's the Mickeys. They're the two main methodologies that we have in Halo. We're not just doing something theoretical, we're doing something very practical, and we have to have outcomes at the end of this project, and we will. So we're now in the finalisation of the site selection. So I'm going to very quickly share a little bit of information about this with you, and then very keen to hear from the audience online and in the room about where you think there might be some other places that might be interested in both of these methodologies, one or the other there. So here we have a site we can see on the northwest coast of Viti Levu, the main island there, where the salt water has got behind the floodgates. A lot of that land is now not productive for growing sugarcane. It's also releasing greenhouse gases and not very good land at all. So the first thing that we did, and this was led by Brad, the mangrove tidal lead of the project, was looking at the hydrology and doing an assessment around Fiji. We don't want to be pumping seawater uphill, but where just the lay of the land would be suitable to bring the tide back in was the first thing that he did using satellite imagery there. And he identified 21 sites that looked suitable for that. We then held a workshop in December last year in Suva, where we had about 35 people attend from different NGOs across Fiji to share with these sites with them and ask about other work that was going on. Were there things that they thought these sites might be suitable or might not be suitable? What was the potential ones that could be of most chance of success? And so we held that in December, and that we reduced that 21 down to 6 potential sites for doing that. Of these 6 potential sites, we've now been speaking with the Department of Lands, thank you to Dr. Isoa and colleagues at USP, and with the support of the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change as well behind this, to get the list of lots and leases of who owns this land, to be able to start having those conversations with either the farmers or the communities, or is it state land, or is it Taukai land, and understanding who's there, who are the people we need to be speaking to be able to now go in and say, this is something we've been doing, would you be interested in being a pilot site for Project Halo in the Pacific? So that's the point we're at now. And this is where we're going to hand over and hear a bit from Jasma, who's our PhD student who's done some terrific work in Fiji with her master's, looking at how communities and households connected with mangroves and the concept of SDGs, and looking at the impact on the societal side of things here. And this work is being led by Dr. Laura Montano. So I'm very happy to hand over to you, Jasmine. We're just going to bring you up on the screen. Oh, one moment, we're just getting it ready. Okay, Jasmine, right, we can hear you and see you. Can you see your slides?
Yes.
Thank you. Over to you.
It's clear. Okay. Thank you. Bula Vinaka, everyone. I'm Jashma Devi, and I'm a Project Hello PhD scholar. My research is focused on measuring environmental, societal, and economic impacts of mangrove restoration. And my specific research is titled The Role of Mangrove Ecosystem Services, Community Leadership, and Cultural Practices in Building Resilience. And we are getting the insights from Fiji. Through a comprehensive literature review, we have managed to identify 4 critical gaps. Firstly, there is a lack of comprehensive mangrove ecosystem services valuation studies, especially here in Fiji as well as in the Pacific. The true worth of mangroves has not yet been fully captured, especially their spiritual and cultural values. This leads to our second gap, which is impact indicators. There is a lack of standardized framework to measure the success of mangrove restoration project. And what we are proposing is we can come up and develop a suite of environmental, social, and economic indicators in order to track the benefits for the community. Then a key part that is missing, which I have mentioned earlier, is from the valuation studies, is cultural services valuation. Indigenous Fijians, remember, mangroves are an integral part of their vanua, and vanua means, and it's actually a deeply spiritual and cultural concept that is a complete connection, I would say, between the land, the people, their customs, and their ancestors. So it's a living thing. Mangrove is not just an ecosystem, but it's part of their life. Yet this is often overlooked in the valuation studies. And finally, these gaps lead to our final problem, and which is very prevalent in not only in Fiji, but the Pacific as well. There's a clear disconnect between research and practical practice on the ground. And this prevents effective restoration as well as what you can say conservation strategies. Can we move to the next slide, please? So building on the gaps that we have identified, I'm going to use our, because this is, it's Project Halu's work, so it's not only my work. Dr. Montano, Laura has also contributed, Danzy has contributed, my principal supervisor, Dr. Entwine has contributed, Dr. Isua has contributed, Professor Will has contributed. So I'm going to use the collective pronoun we and our mostly. So this is the purpose of our overarching research question, I would say. How can sustainable mangrove restoration practices in Fiji maximize social, economic, and environmental benefits while enhancing community well-being? To answer this question, we have a set of very clear objectives. First, we will assess the economic value of mangrove ecosystem services and using a community-focused approach. We will allow the community to participate and get their opinions and try to factor that in our economic valuation of these ecosystem services. Our second objective focuses on developing a suite of indicators for mangrove restoration and using them to assess the social, environmental, and economic impacts. We also aim to examine community views, especially of sugarcane farmers. And this is one of the first studies whereby we are engaging the sugarcane farmers. And we'll get their views as well. And what motivation do they require? And in terms of incentive, restoration incentives, do they require to rejuvenate or give up their land, kind of for mangrove, what you can say, rejuvenation activities. We'll also look at the governance and leadership roles of the various, what you can say, in the various villages, and also the cultural ties for effective mangrove management. And our fourth objective is to develop a Fiji-focused framework for community-led sustainable mangrove management that supports livelihood and also kind of supports the global targets, which we can later on kind of apply it to the Pacific as well. Next slide, please. So with those clear objectives, as our roadmap, we have developed a conceptual framework to guide our research. This framework kind of captures the one which you can see on screen. This framework captures the very essence of our research. Our framework has 4 outputs. I'm just going to focus on the outputs and outcomes. So firstly, we'll talk about the outputs. And the first output is that we intend to produce a comprehensive mangrove ecosystem services valuation, which is inclusive of cultural ecosystem services, which is specific to Fiji. From there, we'll create a suite of indicators to assess mangrove restoration. This gives us a tool we need to actually measure success of restoration efforts. We'll then use our research to gain an enhanced understanding of community dynamics and how they impact mangrove management. And finally, all of this will lead to what we can say a Pacific focused best practices guideline for effective conservation and restoration efforts. These outputs directly contribute to sustainable mangrove management and then leading to real world outcomes in three key areas, which are environmental, economic, and social. For environmental, we expect enhanced conservation and restoration efforts. For economic, we anticipate sustainable income generation for the communities. And for social, again, we expect improved social well-being and community cohesion. This framework is our plan for not just filling the knowledge gaps, but also creating a lasting and positive impact for the environment as well as the people of Fiji, and later on can be applied to the Pacific. Vinaka Bakalevu.
Thank you very much. Now, I just have a few slides here to show where we're up to now regarding the site selection, so you understand before we open up for some discussion and some questions. But we can see here a satellite image. This is one of the sites that we visited in Fiji when we're starting to get an understanding of the lay of the land. We can see there this. Does I have a? Yeah. We can see there where the flood wall is here. We can see this is all healthy mangrove ecosystem. We can see the channels there where the community are taking boats out to go fishing every day to come in and out there to access the sea. And we can see here, this is quite degraded land. This is where that broken bridge was in that photo before there. So this land is not healthy, productive sugarcane. It's got salty, it's not doing anything, it's of no use, it's quite muddy and yucky when you're there as well. So it's not being utilized for the farmers, although it is a leasehold land. And so this kind of site, and I should say no sites have been selected yet because we're up to that community engagement phase that Jasma spoke about earlier. And I should say, Jasma, that you mentioned all of us in the we there, but we've learned so much from you there, and the work that you've been doing in your masters and how to engage the community there, and the vanua that you spoke of is really important. And we're doing this slowly. Like I said, we have the luxury of 5 years, so we're talking to people and making sure they want to be part of this project going forward. So thank you very much for that, Jasma. So we can see these channels here. This is a photo of it there where people access to go out to the sea. We can see here this is a floodgate system. A lot of it is broken and degraded and not doing what it should be done, but there's not money or a reason to fix that. There's a lot of broken coastal infrastructure globally. Fiji is no different there, so that's why the salt is getting in, as well as the overtopping and the salinisation of groundwater that we mentioned as well. And here we can see another shot near that broken bridge before of the land, and that's salty and the water getting in. So this kind of site is something where there's potential to bring in the tidal restoration and bring back mangroves behind that seawall, have that restore the land, make that a net greenhouse gas sink rather than an emitter. Once you bring the tide back in, the bacterial changes in the soil change and stop emitting things such as methane very, very quickly. And so measuring that based on some of the work that Jimmy was speaking about and other PhDs, Janani and Dr. Mani and Dr. Hilda at USP, how do we capture that and measure that is something we want to do on these sites and measure them when they're very degraded and follow that journey through to restoration. And the next slide shows this as well. This is standing on top of one of those walls there. We can see mangroves there on the right, and this is some of the degraded land on the left. On the right, it's about 1 meter higher, just from the natural accretion of the sediments and the mangroves being there. So putting in that wall, draining the land, growing sugarcane, taking that biomass off all the time, there's about 1 meter difference there. So if we can have mangroves growing on the left side there and have that building up, that's going to provide resilience and protection to the healthy farmland behind. So it's those degraded areas that we want to target, and how can we bring back mangroves into those degraded areas there. Thinking about the Mickey as well, because we have to do both things at once. We have to walk and chew at the same time and look at where we could do some potential field tests for the pontoons and the Mickey that Musmil mentioned, starting in Walu Bay. This is a site in Fiji, and again, none of these are selected yet. These are representative sites of where we want to work. We can see here that there is lots of things are being done. This is the before photo in the same area. This now has this nice foot there. If we can build a foot, we can build a floating mangrove pontoon, I guess, as well, and this marina. But you can see there's not much nature. We're doing a lot of changing to the coastal environment globally, and Fiji is no different, but we're not bringing nature into that. So imagine if we had brought mangroves into this, if mangroves were part of that buffer between the sea and the coast. Sites like this is where the Mickey has a potential to have an impact and be incorporated into the design considerations going forward to provide additional benefits to coastal protection as well as biodiversity and economy that we mentioned as well. This is the sites that Brad had originally identified, just looking at the potential hydrology. Nothing but hydrology, nothing but height above sea level using satellite data there with the 21 sites that I mentioned. This same approach would be applied in other countries, other places where this tidal restoration methodology may be of interest. We then started looking at them and who actually owns the land and what kind of land is this going forward as well. And the stage that we're at now is looking at individual lot sizes. And again, this is thanks to the work of Dr. Isoa and Salotte and others, and Anushka and Laura, who have been gathering all this information through the Director of Lands has been supportive as well. And we thank them very much for their contributions too. We're now at the point where we're going to be speaking to the individual leaseholders of each of these parcels of land to see if they'd be interested in being part of Project Halo and having tidal restoration on their land. We're now up to something here where we're going to have Dr. Isoa come and explain to us the concept of a talanoa. So this is where we're up to now. We're at the site selection of that. We can see here Fiji in the middle there of the blue continent. We're almost at the antipode of Fiji. I had a look and it is down in Northern Africa there, but we're almost on the other side of the world. And so so over to you to perhaps explain the concept of talanoa, opening up discussion.
Yes, basically talanoa is when we gather together as a community. We have a kava bowl in front of us. I don't know how many of you tried the culture drink that we know. And we just have a sharing of stories that people have gone through the day, probably from their farm or fishing, and just share some of the experiences that they've had in terms of the work that they've done on the day. Talanoa is basically a storytelling type of activity that we do, but it also facilitates the lessons been learned through the day or through the week. So I think this is an opportunity, like if you have some stories to tell or questions you may want to share, or other things that you think that would be useful for this particular session or important for you to know, this is an opportunity just to have that discussion. And I know you may have some questions or you need comments. So this is a part of talanoa. It's very informal, but also it can be an enjoyable process in terms of how we can learn from each other and learn from each other. I think that's basically what talanoa is in terms of our context, our cultural context in Fiji. And it's actually the talanoa has been used in even governmental meetings in the Pacific. So it's a very comfortable space for people to speak openly. I think we had a session yesterday which was interesting. It's self-reflection and looking at the failings of some of the work that we're doing. That's part of the talanoa process, and I hope that we can have that discussion here. So back to you, Brad. If there's anyone.
Please stay on stage.
Yeah.
I think, and this is a hybrid talanoa. So
Yeah.
we have people online and people in the
Yes.
room. People in the room, if you raise your hand, we'll bring around a roving mic to you. People online, there's a 15 to 20 second delay. So please post your comments and then we'll be accessing them through our technical support. So maybe we'll start within the room, but please post them online, noting that there is the delay, and then we'll come to them. So please.
If there's any questions, you may have to use the mic. Okay. Oh, just switch it on. It's not switched on.
Hello, my name is Greg Leslie. I'm also from the University of New South Wales, and I just want to commend the students from the USP on terrific presentations, and I can't wait to see how those PhD projects evolve. The thought struck me is that this is a very species-specific nature-based solutions project. It's all about the mangroves. are there any thoughts, and you're approaching it in a really deliberate and sensitive way? Are there any thoughts to taking lessons from this approach and applying it to other plantations and carbon sequestration projects, and get away from the inappropriate monocultures that are going into some areas and disrupting ecosystems, communities, local economies? Is there a way of getting the lessons out from this into other?
Thank you, Greg. That's a very good question.
Well, it's the lessons that we are learning through the process. I think it's important because this is one of the, I think it's a novel initiative that we engage in. We haven't done any in-depth to go with the science as well as the application at the same time. And I think the lessons, the process in terms of what you asked about the species, that's one of the things that we've been discussing from the outset, that this is not only looking at, it's discussing the species, but the connectivity to the land-based environment is critical as well. Because it's all one, it's like a big family that we're actually trying to treat a particular core issue within that particular system. But I think there's an element that there's a connectivity in all of this. Lessons been learned here, I would say this can be applied even in terrestrial areas as well, when we start to move, or even the coral reef system. So it's something that I think it's just a matter of time that we'll be able to learn and apply some of the learnings from here to the bigger ecosystem services that we're dealing with, and particularly using the community knowledge, local knowledge at the same time, not just isolating that from the whole process. Yeah.
And I think so that I agree very much. And one thing that we're very proud of in Halo is that we're actually working with the local landholders and the communities, and they're the ones that the social, environmental, and economic benefits that Jasmine mentioned that we're measuring in this to look at the impact both in the communities and more broadly as well is one thing. But if carbon credits are developed in Fiji, as they have been done in Australia using that same tidal restoration approach, it's the landholders that get the money, not some middleman market that's making all the money there as well. They have to be accredited and sold, of course, but it's the people that own the land that are getting these, and not someone saying they're going to plant eucalypt somewhere and offset your flight, but it's the actual landholders that are benefiting. So that approach that's being developed in Australia and we're trialing in Fiji, we're really hoping that that has some traction and we can share the success stories and challenges there. It would have to be tailored to different parts of the world, of course, as well. But that's something that we're really quite excited about, to do that and to do that together. So that's thank you for that question. Any more questions in the room or online? Another one in the room.
Thank you. My name is Albert Vrieling. I work for the Dutch water authorities, and I've got a project in Ghana on mangrove restoration, and I'm very much well inspired already by your presentations and from the students. So that's great, and it's different, of course, than in Ghana than it's in Fiji and Australia. But I'm interested also in the financial side of it, like how do you get a sponsor like Swire shipping in, but also on the carbon credits on your side? Can you elaborate a bit more on this?
Yes, no, thank you. No, that's a very good question. And we are so thankful for Swire as a donor because they are someone that saw the need to support a project like this, which is research. And Swire is a very progressive company and does a lot of really good work around the world, has a big social license. They give back to the areas that they work as well. And when they heard about some of the work we were doing and how being a shipping company, they want to offset as much of their carbon emissions as they can, and how can we get there faster is something they wanted to do, so they're supporting this as part of that journey, and we're really happy that they've allowed us to, or that they've supported us to do this because they see the vision. They see that to get to 2050 we need to do things better, need to do things faster, and it came out through a conference like this where we heard about the work that Swire Shipping was doing with UNEP and SPC, or SPREP, sorry, with the Moana Taka partnership on removing waste from the Pacific, and we thought, that is amazing. So we went up and met after the conference and stayed in touch, and it was just through developing relationships and finding people that want to share that same journey with you. So we're very grateful for the opportunity and look forward to more conversations after this session too.
Okay. No one from online? One? No. Okay.
No. Yeah, so if that's all the questions then, I think we can perhaps wrap up now. So we're going to be here and Will's here as well. So please do come and chat with us afterwards. I would also like to echo the PhD students. Thank you so much. You all did fantastic. It's an evening now in Fiji, so thank you for being online and being available for this session. I've just got a couple more slides to show, please, before we do close the session out. In today's session, we heard from our 4 amazing PhD students. They are part of the bigger Halo team, and everyone here has contributed to the slides and the work that we've done to date. This is all of us when the Fijian team came to visit the Australian team in Sydney, and so that two-way sharing and that two-way travel is something we're really excited to see. So we have the team here that we can see. We have to take another photo because we've got Janani and Julia have joined since we took this photo earlier in the year, and we have another 4 PhDs starting, 2 starting in a couple of weeks and 2 starting in February as well. So the team is growing, research is at the heart of this collaboration, and we're really excited to be able to do this and to try and improve that trajectory that we have towards our environmental, carbon and societal goals. So thank you very much for your time. Vanaka vaka levu. Thank you, and tack, as we say here in Sweden. Thank you, everyone.